getting bigger. Scared of living, but scared of death. Closer yet, with every breath. I call my daddy and share the news. I need a new pair of shoes. Put on these heels and put on a show. 'Cause spin the wheel and leave where it goes. I put on these heels and put on a show. 'Cause spin the wheel and leave where it goes.
Like I didn't want to cross them up.
Totally just like the marshmallow on them. I always take that.
You people. I think I'll start doing that when I train over as well.
It's cardio, just getting ready to squat. So, if it wasn't already obvious from the title of the video and the intro to this video, I'm going to be squatting in flats today. I'm going to be trying out squatting in flats on low bar for the first time. I did it on the safety squat bar the other day and it felt really good. So I'm going to try it on low bar and see how it feels. So the plan is going forward, if flats feel good while low bar squatting, I am going to change to them permanently. But in a bit I will talk about the difference between using flats and heels and why you should or shouldn't use them. Right, one set in and I'm already sold on flats. In fact, actually I need to bench today. So luckily I'm only doing 140 for 4 sets of 6 today, so quite lightweight on the squats, which means I get a lot more reps in the tank, so I actually really get to test the flats. If I was just going for a 1 rep max, it's obviously not a lot of reps feeling what the flats feel like, so that's good. Right, the squat.
Nice little seat.
No, I want these like that.
Mate, that feels so much nicer.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Back.
Honestly. So the reason that I've used heels for so long is basically I had an injury in my ankle a few years ago now, which really reduced the amount of dorsiflexion I had with my ankle. So that's basically what heels do in the squat, is it allows you to get better dorsiflexion when you're squatting, which allows your knees to go slightly more over your toes, which basically means that you're more likely to hit depth. But I've actually realised by watching the footage of me in flats that I'm hitting depth pretty comfortably, and it then allows me to sit back a little bit in the squat rather than pushing my knees forward, which is then going to bring in hamstrings and glutes, which is basically what I need, because I feel like I've really been overusing my hips and my quads, so it'll be a chance to actually develop my glutes and my hamstrings. So that's the reason for the switch. Whether it works, I don't know. I'm going to have to do it for a long period of time, but so far so good.
I'd do one
So you may have noticed I'm using a different squat rack today, and the purpose of that is really so I can just do a couple of sets looking in the mirror. And I've definitely noticed that my foot positioning and heels and flats is the least of my worries. I've got so many imbalances going on in my shoulders and my elbows, my back and everything, my hips, that I really need to address those, because I'm definitely getting under the bar and I'm just shifted over to one side, and obviously I've done it so many times that my body's just used to doing that now, so I really need to address those. It means that squatting is going to be quite uncomfortable for a while I sort of adjust to that, but it needs to be done if I want to be healthy and not imbalanced.
Get set up here now. Okay, fine. Still there? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay, from that bit.
Right shoulder needs to get tighter. Oh, that's done. Then that's twisted. Bars come out of position again. That's it.
Up 3.
Shoulders, yeah. Come on. You go back. Right. The problem is when you get tight on it, that's when you don't come out. Not changing from here to here. It's changing when you're on here. That's why you can't correct it when you're out. Because the elbow's already back.
Yeah.
But it's causing that rotation.
So that's just when it's tucked.
Like this. It needs to be more tucked than here.
Verdict is that flats are definitely better than heels for me. I definitely found it felt a lot better sort of sitting back into the squat, which is basically what I'm trying to achieve to get those that glute and hamstring activation. So going forward, I'm definitely going to be sticking to using flats and not heels. That being said, I've got them back on because I'm doing some bench now, and there's a very little benefit to wearing flats when benching. Alright, that's bench done. Now we're going to do a little bit of core, because I've really been trying to focus on doing my core. So I'm going to do the plank. Last week I did 60 kilos for 45 seconds. I'm going to do 80 kilos. I have no idea how long I'm going to do it for, but I'm going to aim for 30 seconds. Okay, yeah. Don't drop it. You can help it. Yeah, one more. 10 more? Sure. Look at that quality. You got that, John? Wobble it. You alright? Oh, that's it. Oh, that is ridiculously tough. But that's some sort of PB. Not done 80 before. Then just did 2 lots of 60 for 30 seconds. Just going to do a bit of accessory work now and then go home. Alrighty, so I'm back from the gym and I'm being a good boy and focusing on my recovery for once. So instead of taking my normal trip to McDonald's, I'm actually having some decent food. Now this is actually for tomorrow, but I've already had chicken breast and potatoes today. This is a ribeye steak, and I've got an interesting way of preparing a steak. It's not how everyone does it, but I think this is the perfect way to actually prepare a steak, and I found it on YouTube. Basically, instead of just putting all the seasoning on the steak to start off with and then putting it in the pan where you're just going to burn a lot of the ingredients like the garlic and the pepper, instead you put it all on the board, and then once you finish cooking the steak, you whack it on top of all of those ingredients and just sort of mix it around while it's still warm. So that's basically what I've done, and because it's still really, really hot, it kind of cooks some of like the rosemary and the garlic that you've put on the board. So yeah, that's how I like to do my steak. Now I'm gonna, oh, the smell of that. is incredible. And then I just cut it up into little pieces, so go with the grain, or against the grain rather. So I'm really focusing on my diet at the moment because I really do want to try and get down to 93 kilos. And I've definitely plateaued with my diet recently and haven't really been taking it seriously. I've been a little bit relaxed with it. So yeah, trying to prepare my food for the days before and just counting all the macros and the calories. So now that's done, get your hands in and you just mix all of that lovely flavour together. And I've got to try a little bit. Oh my god, trust me, mix it on the board beforehand, you will not regret it. Right, now just to make 3 more meals. Okay, just got back from the gym and I'm very quickly just going to go over the difference between flats and heels and hopefully give you an idea of what would best suit you, depending on what type of lifter you are and where you're sort of more mobile really. So for me, I always thought that my ankles were really stiff due to my injury, therefore I thought I had to use heels in order to artificially increase my dorsiflexion, which basically means I can get my knees over my toes a little bit more. So the reason that you actually want to put your knees over your toes is it puts you in a more optimal position to squat. So if you can imagine that having your knees forward means that your hips are a little bit more forward, which means you're a bit more upright in the squat. Therefore, you don't have to hyperextend to get into a more optimal position. So it's just more friendly on your spine and it just means that you're more compact and have a more stable core, which is just more efficient to squat. With flats, however, it does mean that you don't have as much dorsiflexion. Therefore your knees aren't going to be travelling forward as much, so obviously that means that you're going to be sitting back a little bit more in the squat, and although that does mean that you can bring in your glutes and your hamstrings a little bit more, if you haven't got the mobility elsewhere like in your hips and in your shoulders, it means that you're going to be hyperextending to get into that optimal bar path position. So hyperextension obviously just means when you're extending or hyperextending your spine, and this means that it's not in a neutral position and therefore it's not optimal to squat. So you want to be tight in your core, which neutralizes your spine and stabilizes your spine, and when you're not and you're in that hyperextended position, you're going to be leaking power, and then it's also going to be putting stress on your lower back and your pelvis, where that's where you get your butt wink or your posterior pelvic tilt. So that ain't good for nobody. So really summing it up, it kind of just comes down to your mobility. If you hammer your mobility in your ankles, your shoulders, your hips, then depth and just being in an optimal position shouldn't be a problem. But what the heels does is just artificially put you in a better position dorsiflexion wise, and it allows you to travel your knees forward and get your hips through a little bit more, and then gets you a little bit more upright so you don't have to hyperextend. So that's basically the difference between the two. So make sure you do your mobility work and then you'll have the choice of either or really. Okay, so all of that made sense in my head. I hope that I've been able to articulate it to you properly and you understood and you've been able to maybe take something away from this. But yeah, I'm wrapping up the video now guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave it a like if you have, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.